The Los Angeles Kings are in a transition period between two eras. They still have the old guard from some of their cup runs and guys like Anze Kopitar and Drew Doughty, but that group has been infused with the next generation of superstars like Quinton Byfield. Kings fans are hungry for another cup run after 3 straight years of first-round exits, and that means expectations are high going into the 2023-24 season.
I admit it. Last year was rough.
The 2023-24 Kings got off to a scorching hot start, including a stretch in October and November where they won 13 out of 16 games. They were riding high, Cam Talbot looked like he was playing at an elite level, and the team seemed to be able to score at will. They expectedly started to cool off in December, but it was an 8-game losing streak to end the year 2023 and start 2024 where things started to look a bit dicey for the Kings. LA did eventually right the ship, recover, and have a very strong push to end their year, finishing the season 17 games over 500. Unfortunately for the LA Kings, despite this strong end to the year, because the Edmonton Oilers shit the bed to start their season, the Kings' first-round matchup ended up being with the team that would go all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals. And in that series, the Kings' deficiencies were laid bare, particularly on the back end and in goal. They gave up 4 goals in 4 out of the 5 games that they played. The only one that they didn't was a 1-0 shutout loss to the Edmonton Oilers. The fact that you only scored 1 goal on Stuart Skinner in games 3 and 4 still absolutely baffles me. After 5 years of torture, the LA Kings mercifully ended their fans' suffering by firing coach Todd McLellan. Incredibly, the man most known for bumbling talented rosters in San Jose and Edmonton didn't do so well with a not quite as talented roster in LA. This is ignoring the fact that the LA Kings were 8 games over 500 when McLellan was fired, that he had taken the team to the playoffs the last 2 years, and the reason that they had been in a slump was largely because Cam Talbot is now a starting goaltender in the NHL. But honestly, GM Rob Blake has made so many bad decisions over the years. The fact that he got to a good one, even though it was for the wrong reasons, you gotta just give it to him on that point. Jim Miller took over in midseason, going 21, 12, and 1 in his 34 games as bench boss. That was good enough to earn him the full-time gig over the offseason, despite the fact that he basically was the same record-wise as his predecessor. The hope is, unlike McLellan, Jim Hiller will actually be able to do these things called adjustments during games, and even though we didn't really see a whole lot of evidence for that in the series against Edmonton, he was in his first year as a head coach, so you can kind of give him a bit of a pass on that. Hopefully, with a lot of the dysfunction gone from the locker room, Hiller can bring the LA Kings some consistency.
You're a star, you're on top, somebody bring you some hand.
You should kill yourself.
Even at age 34 last year, Drew Doughty is still an elite defenseman in the NHL. A 15-goal, 50-point year was surprising for Doughty, but what's even more astonishing for me is how solid he's been defensively, not just last year, but his last few years. As he's gotten older, Doughty has become much more reliable in his own zone. He can make a lot of big mistakes defensively, but that's really a result of his high-risk play style, and over the last few years, I think he's done a much better job of tamping down on those risks. Regardless, he's one of the most underappreciated defensemen in the NHL and of his era, so it's wild to see him still being an elite producer at age 34.
Oh, this guy again.
His other stalwart from the Cup era's Anze Kopitar continues to center the first line, and even though his physical skills are a bit on the decline, Kopitar remains an elite two-way player. He can contribute offensively, but his real value is on the defensive front. He's so good at getting the puck away and starting transition breakouts to his teammates. Joining him on the top line is a young buck in Alexis Laferriere, who quite frankly didn't show a ton of promise offensively in 2023-24, with only 12 goals and 23 points in a full year. The hope is that Kopitar and fellow lineman Adrian Kempe will be able to bring him up to speed, but in all honesty, it's more a function of the fact that the Kings are a bit sparse on the wing. Kempe, though, is a legit first-line wing, coming off a 28-goal and 75-point season. Quinton Byfield will be centering the second line, another young guy who got paid an obscene amount of money for not that much productivity. Just like with Slavkovsky and Matty Beniers, the LA Kings are banking on the promise of Quinton Byfield rather than what he's actually done in the NHL. Yes, last year was impressive, 20 goals, 55 points, career highs, but you're not paying him over $6 million a year to be a 55-point guy. You're paying him on the hope that one day he's going to be a 70 to 80-point guy, and that contract's going to be looking like it's an absolute bargain. Helping Byfield to reach his potential will be Kevin Fiala, who could show Byfield what a 70-point season looks like considering he's had 3 of them in a row. Rounding out the top 6 will be Vogel, brought into LA because presumably they couldn't leave that ass kicking at the hands of the Oilers without taking something in return. And Kings fans should be thanking their lucky stars that GM Rob Blake didn't sign Vogel to an incredibly long-term bloated contract after a career year that came thanks to playing alongside elite offensive talent. There's some good rhyming schemes on that third line with Tanner Jeannot, Philip Deneau, and Trevor Moore. Deneau is one of my favorite defensive forwards. I really love his puck instincts and the way he can play defensively in his own zone. As for Jeannot, a really interesting player with a big body. Finally, Trevor Moore coming off of a career year with 57 points. A lot more offensive pop than people give him credit for. A very interesting player in my opinion. He'll have to balance out the other two who are not really scorers, but this is a third line that has just perfect balance. On the fourth line, it's a couple of zygotes in Alex Turcotte and Akil Thomas alongside the wily vet Trevor Lewis back for yet another last ride. Lewis is the consummate fourth liner, and congrats to him for continuing to get them checks. He'll be mentoring the other two. Turcotte and Thomas are both looking to break out as young players, both of whom have promise, but neither of whom have shown that they deserve a spot in the top 9. On the back end, it's the aforementioned Drew Doughty leading the way, paired with Mikey Anderson, one of my favorite young defensemen and a guy who just does not get quite enough shine. Great puck mover and a great compliment to Drew Doughty, even though he doesn't have the finishing ability of Drew. Vlad Gavrikov on the second pairing has potential, I grant you, and seems to be trending more towards a pure shutdown role, while his partner, young Jordan Spence, has shown a lot of that offensive potential, and like Anderson, is developing into a really good puck mover. On the bottom pairing, Joel Edmondson is here to steal paychecks and weigh down Brant Clark. For what it's worth, Clark projected as a guy with some serious offensive upside on the back end, so it's a shame to see that paired with Edmondson, he'll never be able to get out of his own defensive zone. Now in goal, the Kings had a lot of work to do considering that Cam Talbot is absolutely terrible, and they decided to do that by trading away Pierre-Luc Dubois in an absolute heist to get Darcy Kemper. Look, it's great that you guys managed to unload PLD, but you're just swapping his bloated contract out for a bloated contract of a guy who's absolutely terrible in net. The Caps at least got a quality backup behind him and Charlie Lindgren to take over if he shits the bed. You have David Rittich, so if he shits the bed, he's just going to continue to diarrhea all over those sheets.
Christmas time!
Oh, Brit is in this?
The Kemper trade, I fully get. That was not so much a trade to add Darcy Kemper as it was to unload Pierre-Luc Dubois and maybe pick up a guy who could be useful in a position of need. But giving Joel Edmondson almost a 4x4? Rob Blake, are you okay? During the trade call, did Brian McClellan give you the advice to sign Edmondson as like a prank? Dude is absolutely terrible. He plays like he's 39 even though he's only 31, and his possession numbers are in the toilet even when he's not playing for Washington. But you did get Liam Greentree in the draft, a guy with limited offensive upside who projects to be a middle 6 forward. You don't have any of those in LA.
That's not bad.
I think I showered praise on Mikey Anderson a ton in this video and last year, so allow me to put some more shine on Jordan Spence, a guy who is following a very similar development path. He's actually a little bit further ahead of Mikey Anderson in terms of his offensive output at the same stage of their careers, but both are extremely smooth-moving defensemen who are perfect for the modern game. Jordan Spence is, I think, going to be a great defenseman, and he and Anderson are going to anchor this blue line in LA for a long, long time.
The Gambletron 2000 says the winner is Cincinnati by 200 points. Why, you worthless hunk of junk?
Having said all of that, I have some very big concerns with the LA Kings, both in goal and up front. The Kings got a lot of sustained offensive output from guys like Kempe, Fiala, Kopitar, and even Trevor Moore, but I'm a little bit wary that those guys might have just had one premier year, especially a guy like Kopitar who's in his late 30s, and they could come back down to earth. You don't really have one or two alphas you can rely on other than Doughty from the back end, and it seems like you're hinging a lot of your offensive hopes on Quinton Byfield continuing to develop. He could, don't get me wrong, but you're basing this off of one outlier year. And in goal, I think you have the same question marks you did last year. You're hoping that Darcy Kemper or David Rittich are going to have a hot start to their year or a hot period of play like Cam Talbot did to start last season. I don't necessarily know if it's replicable, and for that reason, I think the Kings will either just miss the playoffs or be one of the last teams in.
As an Oilers fan, I want to thank the Kings for always losing to us in the first round.
I hate the Kings because they went back to their shittiest look cosplaying as Chevy dealers in Raiders colors. Go back to the purple and gold. Also, LOL Arthur Kaliev wanting a trade and then getting injured. Now Drew Doughty's hurt. FFS, can the Oilers sweep us already?
After their back-to-back cup wins, it's been nothing but bad seasons and early playoff loses. Their heroes from those days are far past their prime, but are kept on long-term deals. The end result is a slow team with barely any gas left. Hey Kings remember getting swept in the playoffs by an expansion team in their first year. Good times.
Mark Bergevin is going to destroy the Kings, like how he did to the Canadiens.
I don't know, man. I'm starting to run out of ways to roast teams as forgettable as the Los Angeles Kings.